February was a pretty big month. I think this is the biggest episode I've ever done because I have 20 albums to talk about. I'm going to be going through them rather quickly so I don't waste any more time. Let me just jump right into it. At number 20, I have Durbin with Screaming Steel. This is the band started by James Durbin, the American Idol contestant from season 10. He was one of the metal singers. So Screaming Steel was released on February 16th, 2024. This is just classic heavy metal worship. Influences are Judas Priest and Dio. You got some pretty good tracks like Power of the Reaper, Tear Them Down. These songs have just heavy metal guitar riffs, catchy choruses, and just fun songs that would go over great on a live audience. So overall, good for fans of classic metal. Number 19 is Austrian Death Machine with Quad Brutal. I didn't like this album upon first listen, but after listening to it again, it was good enough to make the list. It's a side project of Tim Lambesis, or the guy from As I Lay Dying, who tried to hire a hitman to kill his wife. He went to prison, but he's back. He did his sentence, and this is a one-man band based on Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I thought it was not too bad. It has lots of guest stars. You can call it death metal. Lots of deep guttural vocals and technical guitar playing. It's very humorous, tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time, it's death metal. So it just like barely made this list. Number 18, I have Necrowretch with Swords of Dajjal. This is a blackened death metal band from France. This album is based on the Dajjal. He is the great deceiver in Islamic mythology, or I guess the Islamic equivalent of the Antichrist, someone who appears as a false messiah. I thought this had more of a black metal sound than death metal. The album has lots of that black metal style tremolo picking and some pretty cool guitar riffs. It's a fairly short record with a runtime of 37 minutes. I read a few reviews. Most of the reviewers gave it a lot of praise. For me, it's worthy of this list. It's not my preferred subgenre of metal, but if you are a black metal or death metal fan, it might be higher for you. At number 17, I have Product of Neglect with Synthetic Freedom. This is a deathcore album. Not one of my preferred subgenres again, but I thought it was pretty good and worthy of this list. It's their debut album. The band formed in 2019. Was originally intended to be released as 2 EPs. The lyrics about this dystopian world that we live in, they wanted the lyrics to be relatable. The album has everything you would expect from a deathcore album. Lots of blast beats and breakdowns. The album is also filled with heavy guitar riffs, the kind you would expect from this band. So I'd say check it out. Coming in at number 16 is Enterprise Earth with Death and Anthology. Another deathcore album. I have 2 of these. I rarely do that. I think it stands out. The songs have like a lot going on. They deliver lots of twists and turns. One reason I'm not a big fan of deathcore because sometimes it gets boring or sounds the same. But this band doesn't do that. The songs have a life of their own. So, for example, the opening track starts with like this like angelic singing, and then Face of Fear gives you some straightforward deathcore for 2 minutes, but then they change it up a little. They bring in some clean singing. Another song called Reaper's Servant was a little bit more like thrash metal, then has some like shredding and clean singing. So it's deathcore, but they're kind of like genre bending. So that's why I made my list at number 16. At number 15, I have Hand of Kalliach with Corryvrechan, a band I discovered from the Chill Dude on the Couch reviews. He interviewed them and he reviewed the album. They are a husband and wife band. They're from Scotland, and the album is about the Corryvrechan, which is a whirlpool in Scotland. Supposedly there's some kind of sea hag that like lives in the bottom of this thing. And the band has a unique sound because the husband does the harsh death metal vocals and the wife does softer melodic singing. So the music is a mix of this heavy death metal mixed with softer atmospheric folk metal, and the songs are sung in both English and Gaelic. And my favorite song was Sirin Croin. It's about some type of sea creature that lives in this whirlpool, and I like the song because it has heavy guitar riffs and some of those like tremolo picking, and lots of songs have the male and female vocals going back and forth. So I always like that. The band's very unique. Definitely check him out. And at number 14 is Job for a Cowboy with Moon Healer. Now you might be thinking I have this one ranked low, but I have two reasons for that. One, I'm new to the band. I've never listened to them before, so I'm not a long-time fan. And two, it just came out. So these albums that just come out kind of have an unfair advantage to the albums that were released at the beginning of the month because obviously I have more time to spend with them. So with that being said, there are some things I liked about this album. My favorite song was track number 5. It's called Into the Crystalline Crypts. This one has some technical guitar riffs. It reminded me of that Later Date Death. And the song had a bass guitar sound that complemented the guitar very well. The song also has lots of tempo changes and twists and turns. This might go up on the list when I do my mid-year roundup, but for now it sits at number 14. At number 13 I have Darkest Hour with Perpetual Terminal. This is one of those bands that I had heard about but have never listened to. I know they are known to be metalcore and melodic death metal, but for me, or at least this album, it sounded like melodic death metal. They reminded me a lot of early In Flames. What I understand is that this band has been around for 30 years. It's their 10th album, and it's been 7 years since the last one. Thought it was a good album, start to finish. I think the one track that stood out for me was track number 9, called Mausoleum. That song had both acoustic parts and heavy parts, and the softer parts reminded me of those acoustic songs from those early Death Angel albums, but overall, pretty good album. Coming in number 12 is FKU with The Horror and the Metal. It's a fun horror-themed thrash metal album. If you're wondering what FKU stands for, it is Freddy Krueger's Underwear. Pretty much sums up the theme of the band. The band formed in 1987. They were active about a year, took a 10-year break, then have been releasing the album since 1999. On this album, you got songs called He is the Antichrist. It's about Damien from the old. Another song I like called The Spawning, which is about the 1982 movie called Piranha 2, The Spawning. And this one is about like flying piranhas. It's just fun, horror-themed thrash metal, so definitely check it out. At number 11, I have Infected Rain with Time. This album was released in the beginning of the month, and I was not completely blown away with it. I only gave it a 7 out of 10, but it had the advantage of being released early in the month. I was able to spend some more time with it. And I made a dad joke, spent more time with it. But it's one of those modern metal bands that's kind of hard to define. Fronted by Lena Scissorhands, who is an incredible vocalist, and she does these like deep death growls and melodic clean singing, and they go from one style to the other. The album is just fairly consistent throughout. I like track number 6, Vivarium. Has this cyber synth sound, and they mix these heavy metalcore riffs, while Lena Scissorhands goes back and forth between the harsh, clean vocals. I recommend giving it a chance. It's definitely worth your time. There it is, the bad joke again. At number 10, The Obsessed with Gilded Sorrow, a doom metal band that dates back to the 70s and features a lead singer. He goes by the name Wino. He's been in many different bands over the years. This album has a mix of styles. Some of the songs have that bluesy 70s, like doom, Black Sabbath style, and other songs are more that like stoner doom with those really heavy, thick guitar riffs and that heavy bass sound and the psychedelic rock influences. The album was also a grower on me. I wasn't completely like blown away at first, but I spent more time with it, and I found the album was pretty solid. It's a type of album that doesn't have any like standout songs, but at the same time, it's a good album with no filler, so it's a good like album to listen to front to back. And I have it here just breaking the top 10. At number 9, I have Blaze Bayley with Circle of Stone. This is one of those albums I was anticipating, and it came out the last weekend of February, along with like all these other albums. So for that reason, I didn't get a chance to do a full review. I probably should have. It's pretty solid. We have the opening track, Mind Reader. It's just straightforward heavy metal with melodic vocals. You got the song Rage that appears to be a ballad, but then it takes off and gets heavier. And then a power ballad called The Broken Man has some really great emotional lyrics. And another ballad called Until We Meet Again, maybe one of my favorite songs that has a female singer. Her name is Tammy Ray Boyes from South Wales. It's just a mix of that old school heavy metal guitar riffs, hooks, choruses, and Blaze Bayley, he has some really good solo albums. Just kind of like forget about his time with Iron Maiden. Focus on the solo stuff. It's just like a lot better. At number 8, I have Ghoul with Noxious Concoctions. It's an EP, but I'll allow it this time. It's a thrash band. You got 4 guys who conceal their identities. Supposedly they're like guys from other bands, but nobody knows for sure. They have names like Cremator, Fermenter, Digester, and Dissector. And they are like mutants from Creepy's Vania, or it's kind of like fun, tongue-in-cheek. It's thrash, a little bit of grindcore, a little bit of death metal, and just fun songs. 5 tracks, 19 minutes. The last track's a skit, so basically 4 songs. But we got Eyes of the Witch. This one starts with a horror movie skit, but then it kind of takes off with these like chugging thrash metal guitar riffs. You got like this horror movie sounds, and then you have death metal style vocals. So it's just a great EP. It's pretty short. Lots of great songs like Shotgun Gulch and Rat Liquor, and just very fun. At number 7, I have a surprise. Borknagar with Fall. So this is a black folk and progressive metal band from Norway. They were founded in 1995. It kind of caught me by surprise because black metal bands can be hit or miss for me. They reminded me of the band Enslaved, which have a similar sound, and the Enslaved album from last year was one of my like top albums of 2023. So for that reason, I really liked this one. You got some good songs. You got The Wild Lingers. It has some dark black metal atmosphere with soft vocals and catchy chorus as well. You got Northward. It's another good one. It's a black metal song with everything you would expect from the genre. And there's lots of darkness, lots of heaviness, lots of clean vocals. There's epic atmosphere. So you get like the heavy stuff, the dark stuff, and then you get the lighter, more like airy, atmospheric, ambient stuff. And also add on some progressive elements. And it's angry, it's evil, it's beautiful, it's melancholic. It's Borknagar. So check it out. At number 6, I have Mick Mars with The Other Side of Mars. So it's the first solo album by Mick Mars after going through a lot of drama with his former band Motley Crue. I explained all that in my full review, and it's pretty good. Worthy of the top 10. Doesn't sound anything like Motley Crue. There are a few songs where Mick plays kind of in a similar style of Crue, but otherwise it's mostly like nu metal, post-grunge. It has a very 2000 sounding sound, and supposedly like this album he's been like thinking of doing it for like the past 10 years, so I guess that's why it does kind of have like a 2014 type of sound, but it's solid. It came out this weekend, and lots of albums came out like the previous weekend, but it made my top 6. At number 5 is Morbid Saint with Swallowed by Hell. This was one of my most anticipated thrash metal albums of the new year. So when they released the singles, they got such as Pine Tuxedo and the title track, I really like started looking forward to this album. And it's good. It's in my top 5. Probably the best thrash metal of 2024 so far. I don't know if it will remain that. There are some good thrash metal albums that should be coming out later this year. But this album, the singles were better than the other album tracks. It's just straightforward thrash metal. They're not really experimenting with anything else. They're just giving you what you want. This is more the extreme side of thrash metal, similar to bands like Creator and Sodom, as opposed to like big 4 bands. So definitely check it out if you like that more like extreme thrash leaning towards death metal. At number 4, I have Frehley with 10,000 Volts. I have a full review of this, and I got a lot of mixed comments. Some people liked it, some people hated it. But to be honest with you, it's an Ace Frehley album. He's doing what he's been doing and the same thing over the past like 50 years. He's not the most technical guitar player. He's not the most talented singer. But his songs, his albums, they're entertaining, and that's what his fans are looking for. Some has some good songs. My favorite was Fighting for Life. That was an album cut. But the singles were good. 10,000 Volts, Walking on the Moon, Cherry Medicine. There were 2 weak songs called Back Into My Arms Again and Constantly Cute. But otherwise, a solid album. It's Ace Frehley, and he's giving you what you expect. Number 3, I have another surprise. KMFDM with Let Go. This one came out in the beginning of the month, and at first I thought it was just okay. It didn't blow me away, but it grew on me. I've been listening to it a lot. I like the singles, such as Airhead. That one has a cool, grungy, 90s type of sound, like sounds like breeders, like with the female vocals. But a lot of these songs had this like 90s techno dance music mixed with industrial metal sound, and I think they really captured that, and I think for that reason it's kind of a little more unique and it stands out. Another song I like, WWE 2023, that was a fun song, and they're just doing it a little different. It's a little more techno, a little more like dance music. It's a little less metal, but I definitely like this one a lot. And number 2, I have Ishan with the self-titled album. This was my highest rated album. I gave it a 9 out of 10, but I thought it was going to be my number 1, but it's not. There's one more like a little bit. I'll get to that in a minute. But this is symphonic black metal, but it doesn't sound like the band Emperor. It's bigger. It's like a movie score. You got some black metal elements, like most of the vocals, but it's a lot easier to listen to than a typical like Emperor album from the 90s. It just sounds like black metal musicians doing classical music with this gigantic orchestra. It's just very big and grandiose. It's something I recommend if you are a black metal fan or if you are not a black metal fan. I think it's a little more easy to listen to and accessible. So that's why I recommend this one. My number 1 is Slope with Freak Dreams. So it's an album. I never heard of the band. They came into my inbox a couple days before it was released. I don't get a lot of promos from big bands, but I get promos from just some of the more, underground bands. This one caught my eye for some reason. I think it was the weird album cover with the purple clay head. Then I read the description saying it's a band that mixed like funk fusion with metal. So I'm thinking maybe I like this. So I listened to my promo and it was just like really cool. It's a throwback to that old Red Hot Chili Peppers, like before the Blood Sugar Sex Magic, like those albums, like Mother's Milk. It has that type of sound, but with some 90s alternative. So think of bands like Rage Against the Machine or even like 311. It's that type of music, and I don't hear a lot of bands trying to do that. A lot of the bands I hear every month, it's the typical death metal, the typical black metal, the thrash metal, the traditional heavy metal, but this was something I haven't heard in like 30 years, like since the 90s, and I'm a big fan of 90s music, so for that reason, it's my number 1. That is all. Check out the full reviews of some of the albums mentioned here. I'll put them on the screen now, and please give this video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. I'll see you in the next one.